Chester goes into his act. The next morning, I was awakened by a scream. Robert, Robert, come down here right away. There's something wrong in the kitchen. For a moment, panic seized me. I thought she'd run out of dog food, but I remembered the events of the previous evening. Mr. Monroe came bounding down the stairs. Chester, Chester, I cried. Did you see Mr. Monroe? His face turned white. It's Bunnicula, isn't it? No, he said calmly. It's shaving cream, you idiot. By now, the excitement in the kitchen was at full throttle. The table was covered in Bunnicula's handiwork. There was white beans and white peas and white squash and white tomatoes and white lettuce and white zucchini. What can it mean, Robert? Mrs. Monroe was saying. I'm getting worried. One tomato was curiosity, but this is unheard of. There must be something wrong with our refrigerator. That's it. It's turning all the vegetables white. But look, she said, I left those tomatoes on the windowsill, and they're white too. And this squash, I left it in the bowl on the table. At that moment, Peter and Toby came into the kitchen. Holy cow, what's going on? Hey, maybe it's a vegetable blight, Mom. Could that be, Robert? Did you ever hear of anything like that? Well, no, actually, that is, I've heard of a blight, but nothing like this. Chester leaned my way. This will take forever if we leave them to it. Sometimes humans can be so slow. I started to answer him, but he was heading for the table. What about that friend of yours at the agricultural department? Oh, Tom Cragen? Could we call him and ask him if we're doing something wrong? It's DDT, Mom, Peter interjected. I know about this stuff. It's because you buy vegetables that aren't organic. All vegetables are organic, Peter, Mrs. Monroe replied. That's not what my teacher says. See, Toby, I told you this would happen. They're using chemicals on our food, and if you're not careful, you'll turn white too. Like Dad? Robert, couldn't you take that shaving cream off your face? Oh, yes, of course. Where's my towel? I know I brought it down with me. For that matter, where's Chester? I'd seen him going around the table, but I'd lost track of him listening to all the talk about DDT. I just hope that they didn't use any of that stuff where they grew the chocolate cupcakes. Pete, did you take my towel? Why would I take your towel, Dad? I don't shave. Just then the door swung open. I could not believe my eyes. There was Chester with Mr. Monroe's towel draped across his back and tied under his neck like a cape. That was strange enough, but on his face was an expression that sent chills down my spine. His eyes were wide and staring, and the corners of his mouth were pulled back in an evil grimace. His teeth were bared and gleaming in the morning light. He cackled menacingly and threw back his head as if he were laughing at all of us. I thought he'd completely lost his mind. There's my towel. What's the matter, Chester? Were you cold? Mr. Monroe bent down to take the towel from Chester, but before he could lay his hands on it, Chester flipped onto his back, closed his eyes, and folded his paws over his chest. It was a hideous sight. He opened his eyes wide with paws outstretched. He slowly lifted his head, and his eyes glazed and vacant. Soon the upper half of his body followed in one smooth flow until he was in the sitting position. Hey, Dad, did you leave your brandy glass out last night? Chester's acting kind of a little weird. Well, son, cats are funny creatures. I glanced at Chester. He wasn't laughing. Psst, Chester, what are you up to? I'm a vampire, you dolt. Can't you tell? I'm trying to warn them. Well, it's not working. You'd better think of something else, Chester frowned, apparently deep in thought. So you see, Toby, Miss Monroe was explaining, all cats are individual as people. Maybe he just wants to get our attention. Isn't that right, Kitty Cat? Ordinarily, Chester would have left the room upon being called Kitty Cat, but he was lost in thought. Come on, Chester, give me back my towel. Mr. Monroe moved toward Chester, and Chester's eyes lit up. He looked at me and smiled. I sensed I was not going to like what he had in mind. I was toying with the notion of slinking under the table when Chester fixed on me with his eyes. How deep they were, like black pools. I felt myself floating, lost in them, my will no longer my own. I felt an inexplicable urge to mutter, "Yes, master." When he walked slowly, steadily towards me, as he drew nearer, I found myself unable to move. He stopped before me, never taking his gaze from me, and lunged. Yow! Mom, Chester bit Harold on the neck. Oh, that wasn't a real bite, was it, Chester? That was a love bite. Isn't that cute? Love bite my foot. That hurt. Chester, what's the matter with you? I sputtered. Do I look like a tomato?